Good day, and welcome to a special edition of Election Insight. I'm Wendell Jeffrey, and today we have a distinguished guest joining us. He is a key figure and a political force in Guyana's politics. His extensive experience and influential roles have significantly shaped the nation's future. He held the esteemed position of Executive President of Guyana and is currently serving as the Vice President of Guyana and the General Secretary of the People's Progressive Party. In today's interview, we scrutinize the fulfillment of promises made during the campaign for local government elections. We explore Guyana's critical issues and challenges as the nation approaches another general election. We will discuss today the country's political landscape, his party's vision for the future, and the essential policies and strategies that will impact the lives of every Guyanese citizen. So please stay tuned as we seek to gain invaluable insights from one of the country's most experienced and influential leaders. Substantial interview that we're going to have here with none other than the right Dr. Bharrat Jagdeo, former president and current vice president of Guyana. Welcome, Mr. Jagdeo. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
All right. Whenever you sit for interviews, you either mostly have people who are in favor of you and your party, or you have people who are antagonistic.
Yeah.
We're going to create a balance this afternoon.
Well,
all right?
Yeah.
All right. I want to begin by asking, I want to go beyond the politics for a minute.
Yeah.
You are compared, depending on where you stand with the people, to a person who is the enemy. The last time when I look back to the interview, you said he called you the devil sometimes. And then people have a very high favorability of you. How do you straddle the two? I'm asking that because a person with the level of work that you do and the dependability that you have to exude, do you pray? Do you see a shrink? Do you have a psychologist, a psychiatrist? How do you, beyond the politics, what do you do to take care of your mental wellness?
I think you have to love what you do. And I love what I do, working for our country. And therefore, I don't need to see a shrink. When I'm working, I'm happy. And I can meet people all day long and listen to them without getting bored, particularly ordinary people. Sometimes the people who are sophisticated or pretend to be sophisticated, they're the ones who frustrate me most. But I can listen to a farmer, a fisherman, a bauxite worker all day long and empathize with their concerns. So I think, luckily, I've been able to maintain empathy all through these years, and I still love what I do. I love working for the country. I can see us getting to a place where we all want us to be, in my head. And that would only come through hard work. I know how hard it was at the beginning, growing up in this country. And so I'm motivated every day to work towards that ideal. And I think we'd all benefit from it. Along the way, a lot of people don't sometimes share your ideals, or they don't know what you're about. So some would always be opposed to you, and those who share your ideals or know your heart, those are the ones who will support you.
So no need for
shrink or
a professional.
No.
How about prayer? Do you have a concept of prayer?
For me, I believe that every person should be spiritual. I can relate to everyone's religion. I believe that people should have a relationship with their God. But for me, I don't believe the state's business should be mixed up with religious affairs. We must support every faith to prosper in our country. We must show respect for every religion as politicians. My the way I relate to my God or spiritually, to in a spiritual way, is a personal thing for me. I don't display it every day. I don't go to church every day. I don't go to, and this must be bad for a man like you, a pastor, because you don't get your tithes for if everyone was like me. But I think people should be like that, and it's just a personal view.
Okay. All right. Very topical are one, what is happening with the PNC, and two, what is happening with the AFC. Let's begin with the PNC. They seem to be having some challenges.
Yeah.
And any country needs a formidable opposition.
Yeah, sure.
When you guys were in the opposition, a few years ago, you were very consistent with your press conferences and your outreaches and your critical look at the government at the time. But because the PNC seemed to be having some challenges, I think you guys are being let off the hook. So if you were to advise the PNC, what would you tell them to do in order to provide that needed oppositional role that they should be playing at this time?
So they had an opportunity. First of all, they have to reinvent themselves as a party. They have consistently excluded young people. Look at the People's Progressive Party in that regard. Although I'm back as first-time General Secretary of the party, I was never General Secretary of the party, you would see at the party level a constant flow of young people in the party and upwards. Look at our last Congress. We brought, it's about 11 of the 40 members are new people, very young people. Look at Sarah Brown, the Brentnell Ashley from Region 1. These are young people who now have moved straight into the Central Committee of the People's Progressive Party. That's the highest level. In governments that we manage, they would exhibit the same characteristics. When I was president, I was in my 30s, but I brought in a ton of young people in their 20s and 30s to be ministers. We have a president now who is in his 40s, and a lot of young people in government. They never did that. They had one opportunity to do so. They promised young people a lot and then excluded them in the 5 years. The result is that they don't have young people with the requisite experience, policy experience. And the older ones are stuck in a different era. So they have a big gap. Should they even get into government, how are they going to manage? Because the only way you can make policies in a coherent manner is if you have experience, policy experience. They don't have that. So they, in the last Congress, they didn't do much to bring young people in. The AFC did the same thing. They recycled everybody. They recycled all the former leaders and excluded the young people. Okay, so that's the first thing.
Okay.
So the second thing is they have a history. The PNC. The PNC likes to say that the PPP discriminates against Afro-Guyanese, that the state of Afro-Guyanese in our country is solely the responsibility of the People's Progressive Party, that we are the ones that have denied Afro-Guyanese opportunities. The facts are different. 28 years in office, when the PPP was close to the reign of power. 1992. You look at the state of Afro-Guyanese, or all Guyanese, in 1992. It was significantly worse than what it is today. Significantly worse.
Okay, so you say...
And so, the 5 years they had in office, they had a chance to change that. What happened? Nothing. Jobs, we lost jobs, we didn't get scholarships, the issue of land, housing. These are three issues. No, just give me a chance to completed the thought. So the three issues that where you can empower people in. Look at us coming into government. You had more Afro-Guyanese with scholarships now. We have had about 50,000 people studying since we got into office through 4 programs. GROW, GOAL, BIT, and the BIT and WIN, the WIN program. 20-something thousand are Afro-Guyanese on scholarships paid for by this government. That's education. More land of the 33,000 house lots we have given out so far, maybe about 16,000 are to Afro-Guyanese. So land, scholarships, jobs. We have had more people working, including in their stronghold, than ever before. You talk about empowerment.
Right.
So I'm just telling you, they have a big baggage to overcome. This is the history. And they could have said to people at this Congress, oh, let's move away from the rhetoric. We actually will do something in your favor. They missed that opportunity. They were engaged in internal fights. Okay. And then that didn't help with the trustworthiness. They have a stigma of rigging elections. And then this whole period, the whole Congress was about rigging the elections.
I probably touched a nerve there. So let me...
So you asked me about what I would advise them to do. These are the three things I would advise them to do.
You seem to be writing a manifesto. But okay, good. Thanks for that. Thanks for that, that insight there. Let's talk a little about this renewed vigor of the AFC, given the announcement that Mr. Nigel Hughes is now going to be the presidential candidate, or likely to be the presidential candidate. The word on the street is that that's a good move by AFC. And that the AFC is now positioned to pull seats both from the PPPC and the PNC, given who is now the flag bearer.
That's a pipe dream.
It's a pipe dream. You don't think it's possible?
No. For the plot was clear that people did not, Norton was going to tamper with the elections in the PNC, that the so-called people, the so-called intellectual class would be excluded, that they will eventually support the AFC, the PNC intellectual class, that they would have a poll to show that Norton is not the best candidate, and then Norton will make Nigel Hughes the presidential candidate, and so they would all come together. But
Norton said there's
again.
that they're not going to go with a consensus candidate.
Norton put that bubble. Norton basically made it clear.
Right, that he's not going to go with a consensus candidate.
And the consensus candidate, should there be one, must come from the PNC. So Norton struck the first blow against that plot.
Okay.
That they had. The plot was to install Nigel Hughes, recreate his image as though he is new. Okay. That this is a new person, a person who doesn't have baggage, who has intellectual prowess, who can take on... But are you going to give me a chance to answer?
Yeah, no, because I don't have to, I wish I had more time with you, but I don't have all the time.
But so this is how you ask me if they're going to get votes from both sides. Correct. And I'm telling you why they will not get votes from both sides. That the plot has unfolded before our eyes. Nigel Hughes was presented as new. He was presented as a man with intellectual prowess and therefore could fight the People's Progressive Party. All false. First of all, Nigel Hughes has been with the AFC forever, from the beginning. Secondly, he was chairman of that party twice and resigned 2 times for personal reasons. That's what he said, but they were linked to money-related issues. One with Site Global, and the second time when the negotiations with Exxon was just about to start, and he was their lawyer. So
perception is reality.
He is
in
not.
politics.
No. Perception. That's why it's my job.
Right.
That's my job to point out to
Right.
people
But
that this.
in this perception is
Yeah, but
reality.
yeah.
Perception is reality.
No. But
And
we will not allow perceptions. If we had the perception, we manage based on perception, or we didn't fight it, there'd be no room for you as a pastor in the church, because every day you have to point out that Satan tries to steer people down the wrong path. And you have to point out about the overwhelming presence of a God and the good side.
Preach, Dr. Jagdeo.
No. So that's why we're like pastors in a political sense.
Right. You're a gatekeeper.
Yes.
Are you concerned though? Because the word on the street is that...
We are not concerned, because long before the elections come, the country will come to know who Nigel Hughes is. And I didn't need to do anything. Minutes after being a named leader of the AFC, excluding all the young people, putting back the same old leaders who had baggage from the past, he did an interview with Demerara Waves. And he said something that would disqualify any leader for running for elections. He said, should the country's interests conflict with that of ExxonMobil, I will stand on the side of ExxonMobil. Read that yourself. For those who have not read this, just go and read the Demerara Waves story.
I think he said
the direct quote,
he would step down.
And they read the direct quote, and then you will see how obscene it was.
Okay.
And if I become president, then I will step down.
Right.
If I become president, so he's making it come. If I'm not president, I lose the elections. I can still keep my job as Exxon's lawyer, and I will what he said also is, I will, in my party, I'm not going to discuss oil and gas matters, so I'm going to give it to some committee. Never mind the committee recommends something to me, I'm not going to speak about it publicly. Never mind I have members of parliament who can vote favorably on a bill in favor of Exxon. Now, forget all of that. Forget that I have a conflict of interest.
Your government now is responsible for the negotiations or the interactions with Exxon.
Yes.
You think that it's a conflict of interest? Even that your government engages with them, you think it's a conflict of interest because he represents them?
No. We engage with them from one side, which is the other side of the table. We defend national interests. When Exxon did not want the local content law, we passed the local content law. APNU did not. As a result of this, we have $700 million US and 1,600 Guyanese companies now that benefit from this, because we carved out all of the things they were given to foreign companies, like supply of food, renting houses from foreigners, security services. We made that exclusively for Guyanese.
Correct.
You think Nigel Hughes...
But let me... concessions?
No. We didn't give Exxon no concessions. The concessions were all given by Raphael Trotman when he was General Secretary of the party and negotiating with Exxon when Nigel Hughes, who was their lawyer, was the chairman of the party.
You're saying that at
the
governmental level...
You're not giving me a chance, because it's a clear...
I'm listening to you, and I'm listening to you based on...
You just asked me, how is it different? No. How is it different if we're engaging with Exxon and he's engaging with them?
You said you engage with them at the governmental level.
At the governmental level. And he is engaging with them as their lawyer. He represents their interests, not national interests. And then he says, as a political party, the leader of a political party, I can sit on both sides of the table at the same time, because implicitly he is going to sit on the other side of the table, which is the policy-making side of the table, through his MPs, through his party's position, through his party's manifesto.
Two quick questions. Suppose the country doesn't have a problem with that obvious or seeming conflict of interest.
You obviously don't live in Guyana.
No, no.
Well, we could say, suppose
no, you see
horses
what I'm
could
saying?
fly.
That's number one. Number two,
I'm not dealing with that. I think the people of this country have seen the obscenity of his position. Middle class people, poor people, everyone. That when it comes to the AFC and their pockets, then they will put that ahead of national interest. I can point out several cases. Cathy, you said the same thing. You remember when Video Mega was, it was identified.
And she said
she said in 2015, I am no longer part of Video Mega, and I recuse myself. In 2018 and 2019, she was signing checks on behalf of Video Mega.
Okay.
And also approving contracts of Video Mega from her own ministry.
Right.
But we heard this before from the AFC.
No,
the same thing with Patterson.
I'm not here what I'm asking. Who
would believe that?
What I'm trying to get at.
Who believes Nigel Lewis?
Well, if I'm saying,
yeah.
Even though you had all these perceived conflict of interest that you're now highlighting, the AFC led a sizable, a formidable march against the PPP, which caused...
When?
The AFC was formed a third party that caused...
No, you're talking history.
Right,
that was before. You know, it's good. The country needed the change, right. Frankly speaking.
No, I'm just saying that the point I'm making is that notwithstanding these perceived or real or existing conflict of interest, there are some people who might be willing to overlook that and still give them the support.
No. But you're saying something. There was an AFC in the past that became a third force. They were sold by some people as different from the PPP and PNC.
And they made
made
inroads.
Yes, but you know, allow me, because I'm pointing out the difference between the AFC then and the AFC now. Because you mentioned March. That was their soul. They said, we are multiracial. We believe these two old parties were practicing racist policies all their lives. We're going to make the difference. It struck a nerve, and it gained resonance in a large section of our population, or a substantial section. People believed them. They
Correct.
gave them a chance.
Correct.
And then they saw the true nature of the AFC. They became even more corrupt than the PNC, and they didn't have the intellectual prowess that they portrayed they had. Look at Trotman and that agreement. Trotman is a mediocre lawyer at best, and to put him to sign an agreement like that. Anyhow, so people had the 5 years of experience. Why do you think they practically collapsed? Look at their Congress.
Correct.
The Congress was a shadow of its former self. But so there is a big difference between the AFC of the past
and this current
and this AFC.
Are you concerned though? Because you made a beautiful parallel between what you do as a politician and what I do as a minister of the gospel. And I do what I do as a minister of the gospel correctly assorted by you. Because I'm concerned that people would listen to the enemy if they don't listen to me. Are you concerned that people will listen to them if they don't listen to you?
No.
Is that a possibility?
The thing is that I think any party people are looking for a home now. Many former supporters of the PNC, they don't believe that the PNC has the right vision, leadership, to emerge to win the elections. They're looking for a home. Some people there are some haters who will never like the PPP. They will gravitate maybe to the AFC and a few. But a lot of people are also coming to the People's Progressive Party.
We're going to get to that.
And they see that we're clear on our vision, and that's why I make the case to people that your home is, if you're a former PNC supporter, you're better served in the People's Progressive Party
we can
than
that.
in the AFC, which is a hopeless party concerned about privileges.
Right,
yes.
No.
So that's what I need to make.
I admire your passion for what you do. One quick question on this. You have the bottle cover.
Oh, the bottle
One
cover.
quick question is, are you concerned that Exxon will, are you prepared to go on the record with a concern that Exxon might fund the AFC?
I'm not worried about that because I think we will, whether Exxon funds the AFC or not, ultimately it's the voters, the people who would have to vote. And they have seen that in spite of all that you hear out there, that we have passed several pieces of legislation, some of the most forward-looking in the entire world. The NRF, amended NRF, the Petroleum Activities Act, which is updating the 1986 framework, the local content law, etc., upgrading all in. We're going to pass one now before the recess, hopefully, to deal with making liabilities for any oil spill, any environmental damages. There is squarely a responsibility of the oil companies and the shipping companies. We're strengthening the framework. We have no apology to do for this. We're building a gas-to-energy project that will see electricity prices slashed by 50% next year, and the gas was free. Exxon wanted to charge us for the gas. We said no. So we don't have a problem. Exxon may fund political parties. It would be illegal because they're prohibited as a U.S. company from doing this, except with the approval of their board. Now, the concern here, though, is that Nigel Hughes had in the past expressed that concern when he thought that the PPP may get funding. If you're their lawyer and I say, you don't need to do any work, I'll pay you $1 million, but you send me a bill for fictitious work you did, that could be a conduit for illegal money.
That's a concern of yours?
Right, because then you can't verify the flow. Now, if they pay into any other political party, you can trace the payment. Mm-hmm. But if this would be a quasi-legal kind of payment, but it's for political purposes, not for work done. And so that is one of the conduits. Okay. Because if you remain the lawyer of Exxon, then you can get that money as a political contribution. And I think
that's a concern of yours. Let's stay on this oil that we have. In my preparation for talking to you today, I researched that there are countries, oil-producing nations, that find a way for each citizen of the country to benefit from the oil reserves in tangible ways. Pension funds, housing assistance, direct deposit into their account.
You give me a couple of countries and tell me.
The United Arab Emirates do it, Norway do it, Alaska does it, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and you can Google it, and it is a way of the country using its oil wealth. All of these countries that I just named are countries that produce oil, and they do it. Is it possible that as a government, you and your party are looking for ways that every citizen of this country can benefit from the oil reserves without having to work for it? I mean, when I say that, what I mean is right now, if I have a contract with the government, I could get money because of the oil. But is it possible that an old lady who can't work for the government, or a young man who that monies will...
Yes, okay, so I got your point. But have you examined Norway when they set up a sovereign wealth fund? It was 25 years after starting to produce oil.
Correct.
And 25 years, we established a sovereign wealth fund almost immediately and started saving.
Correct.
Now, Norway's gross domestic product, their living standards, was higher than ours and in the 70s. and yet they did not establish a sovereign wealth fund. Saudi Arabia and all those countries, they gave some of their citizens money, but they have been producing oil since forever. 50 years, 70 years, etc. We've just started producing oil. Nigel Lewis said, oh, the country in this time of plenty. APNU says, oh, share all this money. We have a budget this year of $1.1 trillion. Almost all of the oil money we received last year, with the exception of a small sum that remains in the Sovereign Wealth Fund for investment, saving for the future, is come into the budget. Guess how much of the budget it can finance?
About 30%.
Less than 30%. So non-oil revenue now
still
funds more of the budget than the oil revenue. If it was a time of plenty, the oil revenue should have funded the whole budget and have in excess, money in excess. People need to get away from this thing. It's the same economic philosophy that caused us in the 90s to become the most heavily indebted country in the world. We lived above our means for a short period as a country, and then we burdened the next generation forever. It took us 15 years to get out of that hole. The first 15 years, I was in finance. We couldn't find money to pay our debts in the early period. So it's the same economic philosophy. It sounds great. Oh, we must share out free money everywhere. It sounds fantastic. But it is not sustainable. It has led Venezuela to food. People starving now. That philosophy has led Venezuela. And look at most of the oil producing countries in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, everywhere in the world. Those who have splurged, they're in trouble. You see UAE, bright shiny UAE, in the crisis when they had recently, in the COVID era, when the prices for properties fell. If they didn't get a bailout from Abu Dhabi, that is, Dubai didn't get a bailout from Abu Dhabi, they could have gone bankrupt.
Okay.
I
hear you, and let me tell you what I do. I'm not an economist.
The thing is that so many people say the popular things, and when you go and try to explain this, people say, "Oh, this is a stingy PPP." It doesn't make good policy.
Let me say this to you, objectively, because I get in trouble because I don't have a political affiliation. I have a political preference. I am not an ideological political person, right? I am objective. And when people say, you know, you could give her the oil money and give it, I say in a country like Guyana, you understand how destabilizing it would be if you just arbitrarily give out money. I mean, what would be the criteria for giving out the money and stuff like that?
Also, what about work ethic and all of that?
No,
but money, let's look at are people getting a fair share now, even what we get? Public sector wages. Remember, it's about 300 billion this year that came in from oil. Of a 1.1 trillion budget, 300 billion is oil resources, about 1.5 billion US dollars. Wages and salaries in the public sector, in central government, the public corporations, and the statutory bodies have grown from 2020 to 2024 by $90 billion. $90 billion more per year people are taking home now. That's 450 million US dollars. People don't look at that. You hear about, oh, public sectors, you're not spending more. That's only on wages. That's nearly 1/3 of all the oil money alone. Pensions have grown by about $20 billion. $20 billion more per year, because we're going to double old age pension next year. The children, the cash grant was zero. It's now $10 billion more. We are funding 50,000 scholarships. That's 50,000 people are getting this. 200 billion has been spent now on developing 40,000 house lots. The cost of developing one of those households is about 5 million, water, electricity, everything. We're selling those at the lower end for 1/40th of the price, about $200,000. And so where you think this is going back, it's to our people, leaving out the big infrastructure. I'm not even talking about big infrastructures yet.
Okay.
How that is where you go. We're spending more on health care now. We're building 12 new hospitals. Who are they going to be these new hospitals with modern equipment in the hospitals for, if not our people? And we have to invest in that. Next year, free university education, like at UG2. So the education budget has grown from $53 billion to $135 billion. We're spending on average per child now, because you have to take out $10 billion for tertiary education, $125 billion for nursery, primary, and secondary. If you divide that sum by 178,000 public school kids, it's about $700,000 per year we're spending per child. In the private sector, fees are about $300,000 on average per child. We're spending nearly twice as much. That's why people are rightfully calling on government to upgrade the quality of education that we give to in public schools.
Beautiful.
And so this is happening. And people think we must, share out just the money.
You know, I have to, you see why I have to interrupt you? Because everything I ask you about, you can speak on it for an hour. So I have to, so
no problem, yes.
By way of your manifesto, I went back to your manifesto.
Yes.
And for all intents and purposes, I think that you have either fulfilled or you're working to fulfill many of the things. But there's still some ticklish things that you get. You spoke about constitutional reform. Why have we not made progress? This is 3.5 years into your, and still we're lagging behind on such a pivotal.
No. People would like us to believe that. We, today, in this hemisphere and many parts of the world, we probably have one of the most forward-looking constitutions in the world. When I was president, we substantially, in fact, radically changed the Constitution because we wanted to engage in a form of legislative power sharing. We couldn't do it at the executive because there's no trust between the political parties. Unless you have the parties trusting each other, you form gridlock at the executive level. We thought the legislature was the best place for doing this. If you look at the features of the Constitution that we passed, the Parliamentary Management Committee used to be managed by the government. We now have 5 from the opposition, 5 from the government, chaired by the Speaker. That's one change. The service commissions, the Teaching Service Commission, Police, Public Service, and Judicial Service Commission. Now Parliament has a greater say in the composition of these commissions. In the past, the president used to do all of that. We put in place 4 standing committees that can summon ministers on social services, economic services, foreign affairs, and natural resources. We decided to share the chairmanship of these bodies. Unlike in the US, if you're the executive and you have power, you take all the committees. 2, and rotate the chair. So the opposition chairs 2, government chairs 2, to review our policies in all of these areas. Just imagine foreign affairs, natural resources, economic services, and social services, almost wide spectrum. We put in place 5 rights commission, ethnic relations, a human rights commission, on children, the indigenous people,
you're saying all of that to say what that?
No. I'm saying I'm saying I can tell you. I'm just.
You had
please no. But we had
in your manifesto.
Manifesto. So this was the major change. Major change. Every small political party likes to think that constitutional reform. I know they campaign on this. We ask, what specifically do you want in the constitutional reform? No political party must have the arrogance to think that they can determine what should be in the Constitution. That is why we put in place, we said in our manifesto, we will use the same model that we used
in the past,
which
is to go out,
which is 5 from the opposition, 5 from the government, and 10 from civil society. Which government in the world uses that model? Remember, APNU promised that in 2015 too. And they put, hold on a minute, and they put Nagamo too, who named Nigel Hughes to head that committee.
Nothing happened with
Nothing
them.
happened.
And you guys were
but you asked me, so that is what we promised in our manifesto. We've now named the Constitutional Reform Commission.
Correct.
They have to go around the country. Not the PPP will not say what must be changed. The people of this country have to do that. But guess what we did? We put on our Nigel Hughes complaint about lack of diversity. He is on a party that where almost all our men, the 5 that came from the PNC, that name him, all are men, and I think mainly of one race. We have an Afro-Guyanese, Amerindian, it just turned out that way. Amerindian, a Portuguese person, and 2 Indians. We have 2 women and 3 men from our side. Diversity, because he complains a lot about diversity. Look at the composition of his party now, the leadership. They gave up on that being a diverse party anymore. And they are now put in place, they're all working to constitutional reform. We fulfilled the promise we made, which is to have a constitutional reform commission made up of 5 members from the opposition, 5 from the government, and 10 from civil society, and we've appointed that. They may take a year to work because they have to do hearings. They've started their work, but that again is a question for the committee. It says we fulfill our manifesto promise in doing that.
All right. If you were an average Guyanese citizen,
yes,
and you were to grade the performance of your government, how would you grade? Based on what you hear,
we've had great successes in many areas. We've had setbacks in other areas. We've had, for example,
living and stuff into account.
Right. I believe because we're so engaged. Now the cost of living issue, it's a concern, and it's a real concern. We had COVID the first 2 years of our government. You recall we had to deal with COVID. So we had to address about 75,000 people who were laid off because of COVID, who were not working. Remember, they had shut down the country. APNU had shut it down. And then you had another 35,000 who had lost their jobs. We had to put people back to work. We've been successful at putting people back to work to a point where in many places we have labor shortages now. So we've been successful at that. In the COVID period, many of the factories were closed. The cost of living, for example, a bottle of cooking oil went up by 400% because Malaysia and Indonesia banned the export of cooking oil. The freight for a $3,500 container, a 40-foot container from China, went to $20,000. And now with the war in Ukraine and the Red Sea with the Houthis attacking vessels there, the price has gone back to that for a container, $20,000 from $3,500. A lot of these things have affected us, not only Guyana, but the rest of the world. How did we address it? We said the biggest components of cost of living in other countries, if you look at Trinidad, etc., is not just tax, the utilities bill. All of the countries have raised their utility bill. The price of oil under APNU, at one stage it was $30 per barrel. It fell to $30. It's over $100 now. So once oil prices go up, transportation, everything goes up. So the first thing we did, we said, we will subsidize GPL. We're going to Parliament for a subsidy of $66 million to pay from last year. The price of oil went from $70 a barrel to $105 this year. It's our total fuel import bill at GPL is about just over 200 million US. So a third of that is about 60 something million. We will put $66 million in GPL to pay for fuel so as though not to increase prices for ordinary people. Guyanese benefit from it, the business community benefit from it. We removed the 50% excise tax from gasoline, diesel, etc. So the prices stay down for business, for production, and also for, you know, if you're a commuter. So we didn't see much movement. We subsidize water bills now because we're paying their electricity bill now, so and everything else, so that there's no increase. Three big components have not moved: transportation, electricity, water. Three major components in a country that's in turmoil
So
now. People are going to. No, I can go on.
I know you can, and you could speak for 3 hours.
And I didn't tell you about the housing and what I'm telling you about the ones we did well in.
Yeah.
And now, but did we?
So give yourself a grade, and let me ask you.
No. I wanted to grade every single sector, man.
I have to interrupt you in every question.
All right, okay, all right.
So you give yourself what?
I'm not a man. The people must grade us. They must understand what we are working, the challenges, and then grade us.
The businessman wrote a letter to your government in regards to what the Chinese are doing. They're coming in, they're running the mom and pop shops out of business. They're not paying taxes. That's the word on the street. And you go to a regular store, they write a bill for you. You go to the Chinese, wherever you spend, no thing. What is your government doing about that unfair competition that the Chinese are causing the local business people?
So first of all, we can't promote xenophobia in our country. We're an open country now, and we cannot promote that. However, people who come here to invest, they have to comply with our laws. They have to comply with our laws. So you do have a lot of this. But when you go to the communities, I see the Chinese go there, and the people who are renting them these facilities to establish the mom and pop shop are Guyanese too. I see tax evasion on both sides, because we've been looking at the Chinese to see what in tax evasion, and GRA has to enforce this more, like do things on them, not just Chinese, but more so because there's been a complaint against Chinese that they are complying with our laws, paying the VAT, etc. So I can sympathize with people, but you have competition too. Sometimes in the same village or in a ward in the city, the goods at the Chinese store is being sold for half of what the Guyanese are selling at. And if that store is removed, trust me, they're not going to reduce the price to the rest of the people. You know that too. So there is all of that. It's a balance.
The argument is that the
they
Chinese
must pay their taxes.
do that because the Chinese
no, but then I agree with the Guyanese.
Also buying in bulk.
No.
So
but we can buy in bulk too. Our people are buying in bulk from China and bringing it. But I agree with them that if there is the Chinese are using the system unfairly against our local businessmen, then we have a duty as a government to level the playing field. GRA and all the tax authorities, we must do so, because we can't allow foreigners to come here and outcompete our people in an unfair way.
Beautiful.
If you're competing like that, then it's different.
Right.
I don't on the whole, because
you won't believe it, we've been speaking for almost an hour.
Really?
I want to turn quickly to, and this is gonna give you a nice segue out, because you can also speak for hours on this.
No.
Climate change has been really affecting the world. We now have a hurricane, the earliest hurricane in the history of tracking of hurricanes, a very devastating barrel. I know that you were once very involved in the issue of climate change. We see that the 2025 plan that they had for the Caribbean is now being affected as a result of the devastation in the agriculture sector across the Caribbean. What would you want to say to people who are wanting to pull out of the climate change body and stuff like that? What was your word to the international community on this?
So first of all, I believe that we have to achieve net zero. We support the achievement of net zero, and that you have to have a carbon price, because that's the only way in the long run that you would incentivize large-scale investments in renewable energy to displace the growing demand for energy, which is now being filled by fossil fuel. So it's a simple position like that. I'm not going to go into the details of it because you don't want details. But let's come back to Guyana. You talk about intellectual prowess, and the AFC likes to talk about this and the others. Look at the whole issue of climate and preparing for the future. President Granger had a plan, a green state economy. He got the foreign UNDP and GGGI from Korea to help him produce that, using money that we left from the LCDS to pay for it. It was bringing more costs to the country. Nothing identified as a source of funding. We came into office. Within a year, we just expanded the LCDS. We got our forest certified globally. The only forest in the world at a jurisdictional scale certified. We then sold 30% of our forest carbon for $750 million at a minimum, because if it's traded, our forest carbon on secondary markets, we get 60% of the upside. So we built that into the future. Of that, we've given the Amerindian communities 15%. The first year, they got $22.5 million, 4-point-something billion. They have now done 811 projects in their villages, 242 villages, with using that money. That has already been completed. The rest of the money we put in an escrow. All of it will go to adaptation measures. We're building 2 Hope-like canals in 5 and 6 to take waters from the backland, like we did at Hope, that I got vilified for by everyone, the Hope Canal, but we're not going to get into that today. Taking waters from the backland, we're putting in 39 pumps at 19 pumping stations across the country. We're buying 40 mobile pumps. We're now rehabilitating 60 sluices. So we will end up spending, if we extrapolate from our earning on using the same rates, we'd earn that we sold Hess the carbon for. We'd earn about $3 billion US, 2 to 3 billion, 2.5 to 3 billion US. We'll spend over $2 billion on adaptation so we can foolproof our country for managing water.
What was your message to the international?
So my point my point is that which party has ever in the future come together with a means of funding it? This doesn't come from revenue.
Correct.
It doesn't come from oil resources. Climate proofing Guyana based on funds that we earn from an innovative strategy where the rest of the world is lagging behind. President Lula was here. He said, come to the G20 meeting and talk about the model.
Well, that's why I was asking you to speak. That's what I was saying. Here you are, a Guyanese, with the expertise that you bring to the climate problem. And
but we put
to address
yes,
that
but globally, yes, and the international.
Because
but that's what I said to you, that we support this sort of thing. I'm now working on a menu approach that would allow we have 1% of global tropical forests, and we've earned more through a market-based mechanism than all 99% of the others have earned through public funds.
Correct, and you've taken the lead on that.
And so but you talk about that. Let me tell you, when we tie up the first deal with Norway in 2010, Ramjatan, Trotman, all of the others signed a letter to Norway not to give us the money. We left all of that money to APNU. And they were utilizing, Cathy was just going around setting up these hubs, telecommunication hubs. It was $17.2 million US that we left dedicated to internet hubs in the hinterland and in other remote areas and underserved communities. But they were duplicitously maligning us for it, and then when they got into office, utilize it.
One final political question. The last time we spoke, you said that the reason that the PPP lost in 2015 was because people did not know what you guys really,
Yeah, there were several reasons.
Right. But that was one of the things, You guys have taken the 5 years where you're out of office to reinvent yourself.
Yeah.
Do you think that people have a better understanding of the PPP now?
I think because we are tackling all of the stereotypes more now frontally, I think somehow there was this philosophy that if you work hard, people will see it. But when you're working hard and you think that people would see it and you're changing the country, there's a whole slew of people out there with their whisper campaigns distorting everything. And you sometimes have to do it frontally. Sometimes they say, I'm too aggressive. But who will speak and defend our policies if we don't do it ourselves? Because the others are intent on distorting what we stand for. So everything boils down to race. And that's why we're frontally addressing these issues. So we lost also for various reasons. I said we had lost touch with our base, grassroots. We were, I think, more engaged in government. You forget as a party that you have to service the population and you're going to need to be out there more often. Another reason was because young people did not have a sense of history. They grew up practically only under the PPP. They didn't have much to compare with, the past and how far we had come and from where we had come. So they saw the PNC in all of its glory in the 5 years, the PNC and the AFC, and it didn't impress them. So the young people have their own experience now of the attempt to rig the elections and everything else that we all thought that was here. So there were several reasons why. And then we had been in office a long time too. People get a little tired of you when you're in office a long time. So for all those reasons, I think the PPP lost the elections in 2015. And it wasn't by much, 4,000 something votes. And and knowing what we know now, maybe we actually won it. But it was a good thing for the party, and we need to do more and explain more to people. Right. Sometimes they don't know us. I thought we were talking about fulfilling our promises. The last time I came here.
No. I said I went through, but if you want to address it, I went through.
I came here. No. But when I came here and I said we're going to fix the roads in South Georgetown,
right.
You remember before local government elections? Correct. Well, we had South Romvelt, not South Romvelt, East and West Romvelt, La Penitence, Riverview,
Mr. Victorine, the manager of this television,
all
very
of these,
grateful when you
yes,
came
all of these places, Charlestown, All Boys Town. We're doing Lodge now. We're going to do this Roxanne Burnham. Then we got to go into South and North, all the roads. In Sophia, you hear a lot about contractors too and stuff like that. People don't get work. In Sophia, we're spending $1.3 billion now in doing roads in A, C, D field, and a few in E. 75 contractors there. We're going to spend another 1.4 billion in Sophia in B field alone because the roads are very bad there in B field. Every area. We're doing the grounds. We have made some progress. The ministry is a little bit slow on the 34 grounds in the city, but you see work starting soon. There will be lights in the ground, etc. Everything we promise, we've been delivering. We've been working at it.
Well, like I said, I looked at your manifesto and I saw that a number of the things that you had promised, and even things that weren't in
our manifesto. There are hundreds of things that were not part of our manifesto that we have now done.
Okay, all right. I want to thank you for the time that you spent. There's a million other questions on my mind.
Yeah, but you can ask me. I'm not going anywhere if you want. So I don't want you to start that and then leave it as though I was busy here, like, and I got away from his questions. I ran away from questions. You can ask anything you want to.
The last time you came here, we spoke a little about your family. I understand you have a family.
Yes.
Tell us a little about your family.
Well, I have 2 daughters. One is 4 years old, and the other is 11 years old.
Okay.
So
you're
right. So they, a lot of people, but I try to keep them away from politics and the nastiness that goes on out there. So that is why I keep, I don't talk much about my private life.
Are you proud of them? You're happy?
Of course. Which father wouldn't be proud of?
No. The reason I ask that is because, they have some
that question alone wouldn't be.
Yeah, you wouldn't answer that differently on television. Let's go back to the thing. I don't want to. I realize that.
No. Because it's like when I talk about my spirituality, so too family. It is like I want them to be children and grow up happy, and not have to carry the baggage and the nastiness that sometimes political people, their children bear that burden often. And I just want them to be happy young girls, enjoy their lives, and later they will deal with that, who their father is and all of that. Not now. They're babies and they should have a full, enjoyable life.
What do you think has caused this new attraction of the Afro-Guyanese to your party? I remember.
I think they cross when people come. First, I see lots of people at Freedom House all the time. And first people come, they're very tentative because they've had a whole lifetime of this party hates Afro-Guyanese, wouldn't give you an opportunity to grow in the party, they would exclude you. And often new people coming to us, you would see that sort of thing, where they are a little bit like hesitant at the beginning. The moment they start coming around and they become part of the family, you see the change. Because decades of stereotyping, they realize it's false. And I've had people come and tell me, I've met some older people from East Ruimveldt. And they said to me, it was unbearable that what we were hearing all the time. And we believed. Some spoke to me about even the last election, 2020. They said they were crying and all of, they believed, Wendell Lawrence and all of that we were trying to steal the elections. And because you would not even imagine that people would lie to you from your own camp in that manner. But I think people are seeing more and more of that. They see the heart of the PPP, they see the family we are, and they see the easiness that we have among members. If you go in there, these guys have very rigid structures. They go to Congress place, they told me, and even if you're an activist and you're working with the leader, you have to go through multiple layers and stuff. People come to Freedom House, they can talk to anyone. It's a looseness at which, that's what kept us connected. And the biggest thing that would harm the AFC, I was in Region 1, and a guy said to me, when they came here, a businessman, I used to put them in my boat, buy gasoline. I was struggling, carry them up the river all the time. These are the leaders of the AFC. So after the elections, one of the guy came to see Trotman, and Trotman didn't even recognize him. Trotman, he said, he used to fetch him everywhere else. Everywhere, they ate together, everything. Didn't recognize him. Patterson, someone said to me that he knew him from school, that his friend knew him from school, and said, what's going on, Patu? Said, no, Mr. Minister, for you.
Let me ask you.
That sort of thing. It's when you start becoming like that, and they've shown no sign of changing that.
I want to segue from that.
It is, that is why people come to the PPP, because,
You know, when they asked, after Dr. Irfan was selected as the presidential candidate for the PPP,
yeah.
he was very careful or very deliberate to let people know that you will be his vice president. He said it. That,
Yeah,
that you will be,
yeah.
wait. So everybody knows that you bring a level of political astuteness that is at this moment uncomparable or incomparable to anybody else in Guyana. I mean, you're being compared to people like Chedi and Bharrat and stuff like that for your political knowledge and history. What's the succession plan for you? Because there's no other Jagdeo.
No, but
how do you,
if it's a sort of arrogance,
who replaces you?
it would be arrogant of me to think that we don't have leaders in the future who can carry on the legacy of this party. Our party is based on not just personalities, it's based on a program. In 1950, we outlined what we wanted to do. And we remain faithful to that throughout, bringing our people together across race, across religion, etc. That would always be in the lifeblood of our party, no matter what people say about us. That we want the country to grow, but our lot is predominantly with that of the dispossessed and the poor. So we will work to create incentives for business growth and everything else, but at the same time we'll invest in education, health, housing, because these are important things for poor people to emerge out of poverty.
Yeah, but who sells?
Somebody.
You have a very canny way. You have a grasp on just about every aspect of the development and about the party politics and the party's position and things. What's the succession plan for Dr. Jagdeo?
But that's what I'm saying. Look at how many young people. Look how many young people we're bringing into the party all the time. I believe that they all will grow into that role. They would grow into that role, and I'm really impressed with a lot of the young people. You heard what I said at the last press conference. We're already looking at the next wave of ministers for the next PPP governments in the future. Who are the people who we have to train up, expose, etc. We're a party like that. So I believe that some of these people will emerge into the leadership of the party.
One question I was going to ask, I didn't want to ask it, but you say ask anything. Did you hear that is it true from what you've heard that the Mohammeds were going to start a party or align themselves with a party to compete against the PPP?
You have a lot of rumors. I did not hear anything about the Mohammeds starting a political party. But in this country, this is a rumor-based country. And so you hear lots of rumors around the place. I am convinced that what we are selling now, the people will see their dreams reflected in what we're doing. And we have demonstrated that we keep our word. We are trustworthy. In politics, that is your biggest currency. If you can't do what you promise, you recall the 2015 manifesto of the AFC and APNU. You check if 5% of what they did was done. That is untrustworthy. How can people believe a new set of promises? That's why I'm glad you mentioned our manifesto. We went to the population. We said we will remove the taxes. We did that. We said we'll restore the grant. We did that. That sort of thing. We did it. And trustworthiness is important. If you're going to put the future of your children in someone's hands, at least policy-wise, you want someone who will do what they say they will do. Not just use people to get into power and then forget them totally, as they did. I just gave you a couple of examples.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jagdeo.
Right.
Welcome to Elections Insights, and we will continue to do this with other political parties, have candid discussions with them. I want to thank you for joining. We went a little over the time that we had promised you, but God bless you real good. Stay faithful, stay blessed. Bye-bye.